do this. Like if he'd gone to raise money for SpaceX or Tesla before he had that outcome from PayPal or X.com, whatever it was at the time, would it have ever existed? I don't know. Like it's very, very difficult to imagine an alternate reality where you go with a PowerPoint saying, hey, I'm going to build a rocket and fly it to space. Like that whole story is so crazy. Like you're this one person like flying to Russia and negotiating for engines and stuff. It's like, I don't know.
And also having the foresight to know that, I can actually make a business from that. That there's a viable option to monetize it when previously it was just NASA basically. Yeah, it's pretty incredible. So
well, it's funny even looking at like Mark Zuckerberg, that lens, right? It's like, I can make a product that competes with Facebook. It's like might take you 100 lifetimes to get close to it. Like that is such an outlier and insane thing. But do you want to encourage people to work on clones of Facebook or like, things that clean water or like have a atomic impact on people's lives in some way? A lot of people, myself included, would argue like the skills to do that are so much rarer and so much harder to come by and more expensive to find, employ, build. That's the reason it's not more prevalent.
Welcome to Not Investment Advice. We've got Jack Butcher and Bilal Zaidi. I'm a little out of practice this week. What's going on, Jack? We've got a lot going on. Nashville, Bitcoin, Nashville this week, yeah?
Bitcoin week in the hometown this week, yeah.
You got an event going off tomorrow, and what's the schedule if anyone's in town?
Couple things going on. Yeah, a little opening party tomorrow, and then go-karting. Only spectator room left for go-karting on Friday now.
That's ridiculous. What is it? How many people coming to that?
We got we're supposed to be 150 people racing.
Jesus.
Mate, the guys that are organizing it sending me spreadsheets with like, here's the different brackets, here's the elimination round, it's like a proper. I love it. It's gonna be a proper thing. Like my initial thought was like, just hire it out for a couple hours and see who wants to do it. No,
these guys going
F1 in style. Like we got custom merch for every team that's competing.
Visualize value.
So different people that sponsored the event are going to have their own merch. There's going to be a VV team, and then there's a bunch of other.
Oh my God, mate, that is absolutely sick. If I knew about this more in advance, I would have tried my best to come through. But it
was so winged. Like this fact that this came off is unbelievable. But it should be fun.
We'll
try and live stream
it. Goes well. Yeah, let's.
We'll try.
I wonder if any of the NI listeners end up there in Nashville. So yeah, go check. You posted it in the Telegram group, right, for the opening thing Wednesday. So if you're listening to, what time is that? Wednesday, what?
6 o'clock, I think.
All right. So by the time this comes out. It'll be Wednesday. We're recording Tuesday afternoon. It'll be out tomorrow. So you never know. There might be some NI listeners in there. Go say hello to Jack, and that'll be fun.
Yeah.
All right, mate. Lots going on. We've got Ethereum ETF has gone live. By the way, I will say Trung obviously isn't here. If you didn't notice, his beautiful tones on the voice
it's a little quiet.
On the pod aren't here. Yeah, I did get a great text from someone from England, my friend from UK, who follows us on Instagram, and he sent a screenshot like, this guy has the most relaxing voice I've ever heard. And it's just a screenshot of Trung. Oh my God, I was cracking up. But he's just, I mean, this guy is a funny guy as well. Anyway, Trung, hopefully you listen to this in Eastern Europe or wherever you are by this point. So we got the Ethereum ETF. We're going to talk about that. Seems like a lot of money coming in already. Early flow data. We're going to share about that. Some price target action based on some very sound logic on Twitter X, around 100K price target. I want to break that down. Obviously ridiculous stuff, but let's hear the pitch. Then we're going to get into a little bit of Elon Musk shilling some of this stuff, talking about the dollar destruction, very much related. Trump is this dinner with Trump in Nashville, by the way, that you're mentioning?
Oh yeah.
He's there for the Bitcoin conference.
He's coming to speak I think he's speaking Saturday. Like his literal,
oh my God.
So I think 2 o'clock Saturdays be on stage at the conference doing.
I mean,
doing
he's
speech.
doing his full
Mental.
shield. I mean, if you guys haven't seen, we could probably find a 30-second thing here, Rafa, if it's relevant. But the last time he talked about Bitcoin, the pitch, he said 50 million people in the country who got Bitcoin, the way he said it as well in a very Trump accent. He's really going after that. So interesting. Let's see how that goes this week.
I will ensure that the future of crypto and the future of Bitcoin will be made in the USA, not driven overseas. I will support the right to self-custody to the nation's 50 million crypto holders. I say this with your vote. I will keep Elizabeth Warren and her goons away from your Bitcoin. And I will never allow the creation of a central bank digital currency.
But we're going to talk about some of the wild stuff that he'll be charging to go have dinner with him and stuff like that. And if we get to it, there's an older tweet from Paul Graham talking about and Elon Musk talking about the misallocation of capital. So we'll see if we get there. Jack, what's going on with the ETF? Ethereum ETF is live today. Obviously, I think like 5-6 months ago, or whatever it was, the Bitcoin one went live. Been the most successful one in history, from what I remember. What's it looking like right now?
I think there's these two lads on Twitter that go back and forth on the predictions. Eric,
the Bloomberg guy, yeah?
Eric Balchunas, I think, or Balchunas.
Yeah.
He's basically posting these live updates. So as of 20 minutes ago, so 10 a.m., about 90 minutes after the market opened, $361 million of volume into the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
oh, wow.
9 ETFs. There's also Grayscale. I'm not going to get the mechanics of this correct, but there was another Grayscale overhang that was
from before, you mean?
Ported into a new vehicle. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
like
ETH E, it looks like, is the Grayscale one.
Yeah. So,
well, actually, they've got regular ETH as well. I'm looking at it right here. Is this the one from like an hour ago? I'll just pull up what I'm looking at for people on the screen. Is this the one you're looking at? Here's volume, first 15 minutes of trading.
Yeah. This is
got it. Yeah. So
no.
Oh,
he's got the
updates
He's done
down
another
here.
one since then.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Anyway,
so 360 after 90 minutes of trading, which is like, I think it's tracking at like 25% of Bitcoin inflows on day one.
Got it. Okay, so it's less than Bitcoin.
People
right
are using
now,
that as a benchmark. Yeah, people are using that as a benchmark, and like I think it's reasonably tracking like the Ethereum to Bitcoin, the ratio of the two market caps. So it's like pretty consistent with what
they
you would
predicting.
expect on a yeah.
Yeah, it looks like he said here, using BlackRock's ETF as a proxy, ETH A volume after the first hour will be around 50 million, whatever. He said if it can pass 200 million by end of day, it will be outperforming our 20% of BTC estimate. So given that iBit did 1 billion first day. So kind of as expected, Bitcoin is the major one. Everyone knows it. It's the most, the one that everyone was more willing to bet on. But even if this is 20%, that's pretty solid stuff, it looks like.
Lindia, 6 more years of circulation, right? Like, I think the Bitcoin narrative this is kind of a fascinating subject to me, is like how they will go out and pitch that to boomers or, ETF
funds and
participants, funds, things like that.
Family offices, all that sort of stuff.
The Ethereum narrative is obviously way more complicated than Bitcoin, which is like, immutable, store of value, digital gold, no one can mess with it, blah, blah. Like Ethereum is many possibilities. Exactly, my friend. Yeah.
We need to get Packy McCormick on it, or Chris Dixon.
Yeah, there's actually like, that's the interesting thing though, is like it's either, do like the bell curve thing. It's like second biggest cryptocurrency in the world. The middle curve is like a 9 million word essay about all the things you can do with it.
Yeah.
But the narrative of it being this decentralized computer with like the native token powering it, right? Like the ETH or Ether as the native currency to run programs on that computer is like the simple version of that narrative, but it's many many epiphanies away from just like, oh, it's digital gold. That's like an interesting.
Yeah, that's just a lot easier. I mean, it's literally one line, and anyone in finance gets that, right? Or most
exactly.
people,
You already have a mental model for gold. You know what a computer is, done.
Yeah,
so it'll be interesting to see. And I think the other, I guess the side narrative of it, or the thing that has maybe settled as like at least the first iteration of the narrative is like tokenizing everything. You know, that's
I saw boy Larry Fink has been on that train, right?
Yeah, we got like they just put, I think they have $100 million fund on Ethereum that they're spun up a few months ago, and that idea, but still like tokenization, I think to the average market participant is still like, what are you on about? You know, it doesn't have the same
it's not simple
resonance as gold as a store of value. It's like, what are you talking about? But amazing. The Ethereum public sale was actually 10 years ago yesterday. You saw that tweet circulating.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
Wow,
so
that's
kind of an interesting,
timing wise. Wait, so that was 2014, basically 10 years ago. And that was kind of like the pre-sale, no? It was like an ICO,
yeah, I think
basically.
I think you could have bought 2,000 Ether for $600.
Jeez, so. No, let's not do that, Jack. Wait, what was that per?
Only not invest.
What was that per coin? That's less, like
silly.
20 cents, 10 cents or something.
Yeah, 30 cents or something horrible. Yeah.
Can't be doing that, mate.
So,
it's too early in the morning. No, that's wild. That's wild.
Mate.
Well, no, it is interesting. I mean, do you know much about, we're going to get to that price target thing, which obviously everyone wants to hear, the sound logic of that, of two idiots on the internet talking about it. But what is, people are buying this during the day, but you're not really going to see an impact to the price in real time the way you would in a liquid market in like a Coinbase or a Gemini or whatever, in terms of the actual price of Ether at the moment, the underlying asset, because isn't it like the Bitcoin ETF where that needs to be settled once a day? So like, I'm assuming it's like that. BlackRock gets 100 million worth of inflows that's going on in their platform, but then in the back end, do you know much about this? Is it like once a day they're going to have to basically go out and buy this?
I think it's like end of day with Coinbase institutional, they make that transaction. But as far as like, again, my rudimentary understanding of traditional finance, both of these vehicles have given these institutions like another way to hedge, and like they're not just straight buying spot Bitcoin, right? There's like so many different behaviors in the system that, again, my understanding is not sophisticated enough, but the price does not move consistently with the volume into these ETFs, which is one of the big criticisms of like allowing or celebrating these things being embraced by Wall Street, traditional finance, whatever you want to call it. Right,
like the good and bad, you're saying. Like this also means you can bet against it in the same way you couldn't do that previously, or you can use mad leverage to bet against it, which could also.
There's like coordination that can happen to, it's not, as you mentioned before, it's not like the inflows directly correlate to the price of it at the end of the day. And like all these vehicles are split up over all these institutions, and I don't know, like the idea that these are all custodied through Coinbase, I believe. So like there is a actually Bitwise, one of the Ethereum ETFs that went live today, they published all their wallet addresses for their holdings, which is a cool, a very different way to approach it, and kind of a
open at least,
transparent, like it's consistent with the underlying asset. I don't know how true that is across all the other custodians.
You're right. Like it's not. This has all been done natively in crypto. Like it's not like this is the merging of the TradFi and TradFi system, which for someone who owns it is hopefully a bullish thing that everyone's excited about. But if you go back to the ethos of what it is and actually truly building a decentralized system that works in itself and all those sorts of things, is like a weird kind of thing to grapple with, I guess.
Yeah, I think like after 10 years or 15 years of circulation and attempts to make adoption happen without massive entities that manage ridiculous amounts of capital, or even like building applications that people can use without having to go through a Apple or whoever it is that owns the hardware that decides what can be distributed and used on those platforms. I think 95% of the quote unquote cryptocurrency community is like, let Wall Street get involved and distribute this to as many people as possible. But what's fascinating about it is, in a funny way, like the way in which people are exposed to it initially is so much different than like learning about it 10 years ago, right? Like I imagine if you rewind back to when you first if you first heard about Bitcoin, it's like some nutter on a podcast or something, and you're listening to it and you're like, wow, this is like, the effects of this can be so profound for, you know, every single thing that I've interacted with. And then, you know, you don't have that same journey of discovery with like, oh, we recommend you allocate 1% to Bitcoin through like an this ETF, vehicle that your pension fund. Yeah.
Completely. No, that's a good point. Yeah, because it was, even if I was listening to a Peter Thiel thing on this, there was a clip of this. I didn't listen to the whole thing. He was quite an early, you know, proponent of Bitcoin, and, you know, obviously early, you know, the PayPal guy, early investor in Facebook and all these different things. But his take on it was almost like, that's what he said drove him to it. Originally, it was this cyberpunk vibe, right? Like rebelling against the system, creating something truly different. And it is interesting to see over time how those narratives changed to, like you said, the simplification is digital gold, put it in your pension fund, put it in on your company treasury, whatever that looks like. And I mean, bringing us probably onto the next topic as well is, will a country put it on, like the US government? Like that's something that is being speculated upon right now. Obviously, some other countries have already done that. El Salvador, we covered in the past, have been you know, issuing it and storing it, or doing all sorts of stuff with it. But for a major economy like the US, to, you know, the world superpower, to do something like that is obviously on another level. What do you think about that? Because we'll come back to the 100K price target, don't worry. But this is maybe related to it.
Trump is obviously out there.
Yeah. Sorry, that's true. Yeah. The 100K Bitcoin, that just seems a bit more obvious ridiculous by this point, you know.
Yeah.
But no, what do you think about that? Because obviously Trump is, you know, we obviously didn't even cover what happened a few weeks ago with Trump. Everyone knows what happened by this point. But he's back on stage. He's going to be there at Nashville this week. Like I said, he already was shilling it to the crypto community, trying to get that vote in. What do you think about all that? Do you think he's serious about it? Obviously, his vice president pick as well seems very bullish in this regard as well.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's like classic politician stuff, isn't it? Really, it's the idea that there's billions of dollars of capital. In my mind, it's actually, maybe the ETF backdrop is kind of interesting for this, where I think it was the same guy, Eric of Bloomberg, that was talking about a manufacturing ETF that BlackRock launched a few weeks ago. Had $300,000 of inflows on the first day. It was like, in traditional finance, is like literally may as well be nothing, right? It's not a meaningful amount of money at that scale. And so, like, politically, what industries are emergent and have money to spend on getting people elected and attempting to shape policy? Crypto is like, I don't know, in my mind, the most. Maybe AI is the second biggest, right? And if you want to group that into technology or whatever.
So just clarify, you're saying what, the group of people? What are you saying there?
I'm saying, like, as an industry, like, that is emergent and that capital is sloshing around. Like, as a politician, who do I want to court and who do I want to like?
Oh yeah, courting wise for sure.
yeah, shape the narrative around what like the laws that are going to be written and blah blah. And it
Because
just doesn't
inherent
feel
in
like
his
there's
comment,
even a
right?
close.
Yeah, the close second, even, right?
There's not a close second competitor. It's just like good politics, and like Trump has been putting out NFT projects and like he's just not him personally, people on his team, right? It's like
Yeah.
I don't think he ever had some like moral aversion to this. It's just
It's when
the
it's convenient
flippening
or
or
not,
the
I guess, right?
understanding. Yeah, it's the understand, and it's like I think even looking at it without like the cypherpunk origin of it, it's like how much capital is in this industry, how many people want to build businesses around it, how much of a competitive advantage would it be to have the US viewed in that light and not have capital moving offshore, talent not moving here, people not starting businesses in the States because of the way this stuff is. There's so much uncertainty around building any kind of business that is tangentially related. Even opening a bank account in the States right now is like you have to go through this thing. Does your business have any association with
Oh,
crypto?
yeah.
There's a good chance that one day you wake up and it's just like, hey, you're now don't have a bank account with us.
Yeah.
So in my mind, like it's almost like a no-brainer because the other side of the issue just doesn't feel like people feel that strongly about it. Like the one part that the one issue voter is going to vote in that direction to preserve that, but in the opposite direction, I don't think it's like a deal breaker for people that aren't involved
with
Does
it.
that make sense?
You're so just clarify. You're saying if the 50 million people that own crypto, let's say even if it's 10 million people who are a bit more hardcore, those people are like, oh, this directly impacts my bags. I'm voting for this on a positive way. Whereas someone else who's like cares about other things, they're like, oh, if they're gonna pass that, but let's say they're middle of the road, but they're like, oh, well, he's gonna pass that thing. Yeah, I'm not. It's like you don't hate it as much as the people that are willing to vote for it. I hear that in conversations for sure, completely.
Yeah, free votes, and like, it also has this narrative of like in a period of like a lot of people feeling like economically stagnant, like the backdrop of the last however many years outside of crypto is like there isn't like widespread opportunity in the same way that like maybe the first 10 years of the internet being commercialized felt like, oh, every business has an opportunity to integrate the internet and increase their like just create value in that area.
Yeah, so much more upside.
Doesn't feel like there's that much competition for crypto with regards to that, outside of maybe AI, which we've talked at length about. So yeah, seems obvious. And then the whole like political incentive to say whatever gets people to vote for you, and then when it actually comes to legislating something, maybe it's a watered down version of the thing you said, or it doesn't get done at all, right? So,
well, that's
announcing something. I was going to say, sorry. The speculation is like on whenever this speech is, he's going to come out and say we're going to put Bitcoin on the like balance sheet, like it's going to be a strategic reserve asset for the country. And I don't know that I actually I won't
put $30,000 worth on, like that manufacturing ETF. No, but go ahead.
I won't attempt to summarize this guy's writing, but there's a guy called Jason Lowery who's like, I think he was in the Air Force and now the Space Force. He wrote a book called Soft War, and it got banned. Speculation is like, it was like published with, I think MIT co-published it. You can't get it from MIT anymore. And so as soon as I learned that, I was like, oh, I have to read this thing. I have to figure out how to like understand what's in that book. And the basic premise of it is like over time, the adoption of an asset like Bitcoin can circumvent the need to fight physically, like instead of sending people to war, having people like destroy their physical bodies for this stuff. It's like it becomes a race of who can produce and capture the most energy.
Yeah.
And Bitcoin is an asset that reflects that. But anyway, guy's name is Jason Lowry, and I listened to like the first 4 hours of he has a What Is Money series, Breathe Low.
Seriously? Oh, no way. Okay.
He's on there 6 hours, really good. Again, it's like a sailor thing where you're like 3 hours before they even say the word Bitcoin, they're like teeing up
like goats in a
first
field
principles, biology, exactly, and then they end up there.
Incredible show, yeah.
So again, I think like it's also like this stuff really. You either feel like a total nutcase listening to the stuff and be like, yeah, that makes sense. And then you like walk out in the street and it's like, like if I try to explain this to somebody, they'd be like,
yeah, it doesn't make sense. Yeah.
Point you to the nearest facility or something.
Yeah.
Right. But you have to like also imagine that people who've been involved in this for 15 years, can you imagine like mining the shit in your basement and now like the
president,
the person that is likely to be elected the president of the state is trying to get your vote. It's like it's such a crazy thing to have happened in that matter of time, and even being involved in it for 4 or 5 years, you're like, even these ETFs and stuff is like 2 years ago you'd be like, nah, never happening, and it just
even a few months ago on the ETH one, because I think that was there was a big turnaround recently. Well, the other thing I'll mention, because I think for these ETH ETFs, I didn't read in the last day, but when I read about this a few weeks ago at least, they weren't going to be including staking revenue, I'm pretty sure, right? Do you know much about this?
Yeah, I think they removed that to get it pushed through.
But and so for people that don't know, we've covered obviously on the pod before, ETH natively you can stake. You'll probably earn like 4, 5, 6%, whatever it is at the moment. I'm not sure.
Not that high at the moment.
Oh yeah, okay, probably less. But
3 or 4 or something. Yeah.
Got it. But I think when I remember hearing Raoul Pal talk about it, whatever you think about him, incredible shiller of this sort of stuff too, and comes from TradFi, knows that world.
Zone, mate.
Banana Zone, exactly. And I think he does a great job of explaining complex stuff in a fairly simple way that's even someone like I can understand what's going on. And he was talking about, what you said there right in the beginning about Bitcoin, digital gold is straightforward, simple. But then he was talking about when he was going and speaking, a lot of his work is talking to traditional finance people in all sorts of areas. He was at Goldman Sachs for a long time previously, I think. And what was exciting to people was this idea of yield, like go back a few years, that was something we were talking about in DeFi. You could, stake your tokens and all that stuff. Even now, you can do that for like Lido, for example. You get like liquid staking for ETH, or if you've got a 32 ETH, if that's still the number, you can do it yourself. And you basically earn that amount as yield, which for a traditional finance person is like, oh, okay, so there's an asset that potentially can appreciate, but also I'm getting yield, kind of like a dividend or a bond or whatever you want to compare it to. And so that is actually quite a significant piece, which maybe that will get passed in the future and maybe makes those things more attractive. But talking to that idea of how do you translate, these new words that we've learned in the last few years, what the hell is staking to a traditional finance? But I don't think they use that phrase in the same way, right? Like it's a very specific thing. But they understand you earn 4 to 5% yield on an asset, right? So there is interesting things still to go in that way as well. I'm just going to share my screen really quickly. This is all related, obviously. This is what Elon Musk posted. I think this was yesterday, is it? Yeah, last night or something like that, or 2 p.m. on Monday. So yeah, I think you shared this with me, right? Your grin. So what is that?
Well, it's crazy. I mean, it's kind of a, this has been especially the Bitcoin maxi talking point for as long as I can remember. Has always been about, the inception.
Let's describe it as well, actually, for people listening. Most people.
Oh, sorry,
He tweeted,
where are we with dollar destruction? You might ask, and it's a visual with. I don't even know what this is. A silver coin?
Yeah, I guess it's like a quarter or maybe it's I'm not even sure. Yeah, so it's
not a great graphic, really. Silver dollar. Okay.
Let me just go.
So it's like the abstraction. So it's a physical silver dollar coin. Then it's a silver dollar note. Then it's a dollar, presumably not with a commodity backing it. Then it's $1 trillion or $50 trillion Zimbabwe note. Then it's a bullet.
That's what. And then we got
an arrow.
Yeah. It says you are here.
There's an arrow between the
current
dollar and the Zimbabwe.
Got it. And we got our boy Michael Saylor, friend of the pod, in the comments.
Yeah.
Says Bitcoin over bullets. We've got Ansem in there talking about, these guys are all shilling it. Elon Musk, Larry Fink, Donald Trump. So, yeah, I mean, we've got our other friend of the pod, Dennis, talking about buy guns, gold, and Bitcoin. I mean, this is obviously not a new idea for a lot of people listening to this. But again, this is Elon Musk, the richest man in the world, the guy who owns Twitter, in a week that Trump is about to talk about some of this stuff. What we'll say, a lot of people have been following the idea of the fourth turning, like all that sort of stuff. Even if you read the Dalio book, I'm not smart enough to explain that in succinctly on this podcast, but you can go check that out if you haven't already read it. This idea of there's waves, right? And you have empires and you have different systems that work, and we've been talking about on the pod for a long time. But these aren't random people, right? And so maybe that you could say, what's the incentive? Everyone's selling something here. Don't get me wrong, right? Elon Musk is selling you something. Michael Saylor definitely selling you something. Ansem is definitely shilling something too, which is fine. But there is this interesting idea that a lot of people have been grappling with for a while. And like I said, a week and a half ago, Donald Trump obviously there was an assassination attempt on him. Joe Biden just stepped down. This is a wild time. Like, it's not a normal time. Either way, whatever you think of the political situation. So it is an interesting
the Overton window.
Exactly. So it is a weird time. And obviously, look, if we ever got to that last few stages, we got bigger problems. Don't get me wrong, right? So that's not something I'm especially wishing on the world. But it is interesting just to keep an eye on, because let's just go to 2020 to now. How many things have happened that we thought never could happen? So even if it's a 2% part of my mind share, I'm open to the fact that things can get wild very quickly. Talking of Trump, you did mention he's going to be there this week. You heard about, maybe you got a flyer or something, you said, right?
I got a little flyer, a little digital flyer, yeah.
Digital flyer.
If anybody's interested, you could get a photo taken for 60 grand.
That's
ridiculous. If you want to bring your partner or friend with you, it's 100 grand. And then there's a round table, which I'm not sure what that entails. Maybe you get a steak included in this, but that's 850 grand.
I hope for 850 grand you get more than a steak, you know what I mean? But that is wild.
He's gonna raise some money this week for sure, and old Elon is pumping some money to the Trump campaign the next few months. Yeah,
they said that. What was it? What was the number? 40 million a month?
45 million a month, I think is
that's
right.
That's wild.
Up till the election, yeah. So it's kind of the Elon crypto stuff has always been like, I think his stance on it has been like hard to decipher over the years, but
yeah.
The few clips that you can pull out where he talks about, there was two things I think I've seen from him where it's like, you can't increase the money supply without inflation. Like, that's just, a very basic formula. And then the other one that I've always referenced is this idea of like, money is just a information system. The economy is products and services, right? And that's consistent with everything that he builds and talks about, is like this is just a way to keep track of products and services being exchanged between people, and the idea that the system that governs that can be modified at will by a small number of people that have incentives that are not aligned with yours is potentially not a great thing long term. And that's, there's a million different ways people frame Bitcoin as the solution to that, but it would not surprise me now that like this Overton window starts shifting over to, there was this speculation that when Tesla sold a bunch of Bitcoin, that was like a denouncement of it as like a viable alternative or currency. But he replied to that, I think, and said, this is just a test that we can, like, that it's liquid enough that we can move in and out of it without issue. Who knows how true that is, but yeah, it doesn't feel, especially if it's like the political alignment that's occurring between Elon and Trump and all of the like
Well, tech in general has been quite a big change, I think, right? Because traditionally,
100%.
I mean, we haven't talked much about it, but traditionally, like the West Coast, East Coast. I mean, East Coast is a little bit different because it's, it depends what part. But generally speaking, mostly Democrat states like New York, I'm talking about, and California, obviously, with Silicon Valley there. And going back 4 years ago, you wouldn't see, like major tech names even saying they would potentially support, let alone like let's say the All In Pod. You've got the number one tech podcast, whatever you think of them. They've purposely built it so that it's David Sacks is openly conservative, right leaning Republican. You've got previously Chamath was maybe more. Chamath's been all three, right? So like he's been left, middle, and right depending on you when you ask him, which I'm also not against. Honestly, like people can change their opinions, obviously. But yeah, Chamath's a very specific case in that regard. And you got, so those guys are obviously quite influential in that world. And they've recently hosted a Trump dinner, I think it was, with Chamath in there and David Sacks. And so just stuff like that, I can't imagine that happening 4 years ago is kind of my point versus now, right?
Total swing in perception around all of that stuff. Yeah. And the X... acquisition and all the town square being operated differently than it was 4 years ago also has a big part to play in this. Yeah We'll see, man. We'll see what happens on Saturday. We'll see what happens by the end of the day with the ETH inflows.
There we go. But, exactly,
mate, all signs point to more involvement, more ownership, more adoption. We will see.
Investment advice, obviously. So yeah, let's get to another tweet. Jack, you shared this with me. Let me just pull it back. This was 1 second here. This is, can you see my screen here?
Yeah.
This is a tweet from maybe a few weeks ago. You shared this in our group chat and said this might be an interesting topic. So for people who are only listening, which is most of you, Paul Graham, obviously founder of Y Combinator, he basically shared out this CB Insights massive, long infographic / long slide, essentially, which has got different clusters of companies that are the global unicorn club. That means, it says 1,200 private companies valued over.
I didn't even see the subtitle.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't know.
What did you think it was? Did you thought it was just like
I just thought it was like I thought it was just like the most I don't know.
Valuable private companies? Or just maybe a random bunch of companies. Yeah. But
shit people knew about, yeah.
I guess they would be up there because they're the most highly valued ones. But yeah, so it's 1,200 companies that are valued as unicorns, $1 billion or more. We could come to what that means nowadays with, the swing in valuations and stuff. But there's different clusters here for people listening only: artificial intelligence, AI, auto, transportation, consumer and retail, data, analytics, cybersecurity, e-com, fintech, edtech, hardware, which is crucial in this discussion, health, internet services, etc. So we can link to that. You can check it out. The interesting thing here is Elon Musk responded, major misallocation of capital, in my opinion. Most on this list won't make it. Not enough talent in manufacturing and heavy industries. If we come back up to this, you can see hardware is quite small. I don't know if there was one around manufacturing.
That one, that's got to be the biggest one, right?
Which one, sorry? Internet, you said?
Fintech.
Oh, fintech. Yeah, I mean, massive. Yeah, you got the Brex, BlockFi, built, like all these guys in here. So, I guess, and the original tweet from Paul Graham is basically saying that software takes up a massive part of this. Making physical stuff is hard, but don't let that deter you if that's what you're interested in. If things go in the right direction, basically, it will be the biggest of the lot. So, quite interesting. What was your take on this? Because it is a really... obviously Elon Musk has done SpaceX, Tesla.
Yeah.
He also did PayPal back in the day. Now runs Twitter X. So he's kind of done the whole thing. Obviously, Paul Graham's invested in all sorts of stuff over the years. Feels like the 2010s was the the decade of the marketplace, the app on the phone, Uber,
social
Airbnb,
network, like
social network.
the social network. I'm talking about the film.
Oh yeah.
Like even
That
the cultural
inspirational.
programming is like, yeah, this stuff probably lags like most famous, richest person in the world produces all of this like cultural material that get people to follow them into that, right? That's what people want. That's what people are buying. That's what I should spend my time doing. How many millions of failed ventures are there underneath all of those? Like, I had no idea that those were all operating at that scale when I looked at the graphic originally. It was like, how many of those companies do the same thing? A good amount, right? And the idea that the barrier to entry to get involved in not all of those, but some of them, like the fintech wrappers and things like that, like the value is like in creating a brand, like creating some good UX, and then like maybe like legal maneuvering, or it's like these things that are
like regulatory stuff or something. Like you got some moat.
Yeah, there's some moat, or there's some like like some short-term arbitrage to
or
capture.
You got a contract with the government where you're getting a bunch of money for a while,
Exactly. Or like you're mailing out razors instead of like selling them in the shop, and then you end up putting them back in Target anyway. Yeah. I guess, and that stuff is like necessary, and like if you can build $1 billion business doing that, very cool. But the like even just the capital, I would imagine that the like disingenuous interpretation of that is like the capital intensity of a hardware business versus a software business is so many orders of magnitude bigger.
Oh yeah.
And the risk for anybody to back it. Yeah, exactly. The risk for anybody to back it is so it's like, it's very obvious why that is the case. Like, oh, why is nobody starting a car brand or like a plane? It's like, because it costs hundreds of billions of dollars to even begin to, well, maybe I have no idea.
But you're right.
Costs,
like
but
to do basically a Tesla, SpaceX, like costs crazy money, right?
Yeah. And like, I guess even the cultural, like the pursuit of education, even, right? Like how many people are getting engineering degrees versus marketing degrees or whatever. Like I look back at myself and I'm like, at times you think like, how much of the things you pursued were intrinsically interesting to you versus like, oh, there's opportunity at the end of this that I can, I'm going to be in a better spot to look after myself if I have this skill set, because that same idea applies at the education level, right? It's like, if we want society to go in that direction, then you have to sink capital into teaching people how to do that too. Like that's not like people get a marketing degree and then go work for Verizon selling phones.
Yeah.
Like the ROI on their $100,000 degree, they can, I don't know, make it back in however long. And like 90% of that they're paying to a university is, we've talked about this at length. A lot of the times they could have watched 3 YouTube videos and gone work somewhere.
For the actual information, maybe not so the qualification, but the knowledge
teaching
itself,
somebody how to build an engine is like a whole fucking different, like a completely like otherworldly.
Yeah, even honestly compared to like coding or like software engineering,
100%.
A lot of people learn that themselves. They might not get the full, experience of computer science learning from the kernel upwards or whatever, but they if you want to be a front end or back end coder, you can learn that yourself, right? But that's it. But you're right, like the hardware side, you need to be in a place where they allow you to even test stuff like that. It's like the Bunsen burner equivalent, like
exactly, mate.
In science.
Even like making a t-shirt compared to like operating an internet business is like significantly higher lift.
Oh yeah.
Like it's crazy. So if you get into like actually manufacturing electronic devices, there's so many cool, like really small businesses that do it though. We ever talked about Teenage Engineering? Do you know that company?
No, what's that?
So they make like sound equipment, so like little mixers and recorders. Let me pull it up.
Pulling it up right now. Is it
show you.
teenage.engineering, yeah?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
A wall of sound in your pocket. I'll share my screen. Oh, no, go ahead. You share
I got it. Yeah, just like if I think back to my early days in my design career, it's like,
that's beautiful.
Man, it's so much more aspirational for me personally to be like building objects, making stuff, putting stuff into the world. It's an incredibly satisfying and gratifying thing versus like churning out ad campaigns for some telecoms company, right? With
I feel like you worked on Verizon now that you said that. But
mate, I keep saying it over. Yeah, it's exactly like my personal experience in this is definitely like biasing my response to it, but the same thing we're talking about with this like change in the Overton window of what people think is cool or interesting or like politically viable. In my mind, the path that people take when they're coming out of school is influenced by that, and it takes 10 years, 20 years for that to like play out in economic terms. So
I think you made a great point about the Social Network film. Sorry to cut you off. Like that's a great example of, you know, we all watched that and we're like, oh, I'm not even coding, but I want to get involved with this. And, you know, that's, it was,
it's funny. It was kind of a negative film too.
Yeah. About him stealing an idea, which is funny, but you still leave it being like, no, he's still kind of a G, you know? But, imagine that was,
and his life was not good by any objective measure, right? It was like, just hell. And it's like, I want to do that. That looks great.
You're right. But it was like that cultural moment of, you know, hacker houses and like fly to Silicon Valley. I mean, I know so many people, man, like including us moving here. I don't know how much that Silicon Valley kind of mindset was part of your decision to move here. But like that, probably for me, it was majority of like, oh, even if I didn't move to Silicon Valley, just coming to the States was like, I was moving obviously with the tech company. So I was like, oh, I'm closer to the action there than I am in London or whatever. And I remember meeting a guy like in the UK that ended up going at like 18 or something to like Silicon Valley. And like he was actually the youngest guy that got into YC at the time. And I was like, man, that's incredible. And like he for sure would have watched this movie and been like, this is exactly what I want to do. But I guess the question is, you know, let's say the movie is a positive side. Let's say that movie was about Elon Musk starting Tesla or SpaceX or like, you know, building it anyway. And then on the flip side, now you've got a negative side of all the press and all the split discussions on him of is he doing bad and all this sort of stuff. Like
right.
That's like taken away even more. Like even being neutral on him is a plus for him for a lot of things, right?
100%. There's no studio with distribution that would make a positive film about that guy. I don't think.
Exactly. And I'm thinking now, like you said, like I was chatting to my nephew 2 days ago. He's like 7, and a lot of people have heard this. But have you spoken to any 7-year-olds recently? Or I mean, I know you got kids.
No, I haven't.
But like the number one thing they want to be is a YouTuber, right? Like, and you know, whatever. Maybe that's a whole discussion in itself. But and that's. I mean, I was talking about it to someone because I think our initial response as adults is like, oh, that's so sad because like, you know, like we think of all the influencers in the wild content of like being on a selfie stick. But think about what we thought when we were kids. Do you remember what you wanted to be when you grew up? A pilot or a fucking astronaut?
I wanted to be Jeremy Clarkson.
Yeah.
Basically a YouTuber.
Yeah, basically a YouTuber and basically what you're doing this week. So you're pretty close, mate. Well done. No, but all jokes aside, I remember like when I was working there, that was something we would present to people. Like that was a slide. It was kids want to be YouTuber. That's because that's what they're watching. That's like their movie star, right? So it sounds weird, but when you break it down, you're like, okay, if I want to be an astronaut or a pilot, 99% of us didn't actually do that when we grew up. It was just the thing that was most prominent in our lives. So, and the other thing I will say, what he said was, I was asking him, well, who are your favorite YouTubers? And he was like, oh, I like Mr. Beast. And he goes, I loved he planted 200,000 trees. That's so good, like for the environment. And he loves science and stuff, you know. And I was like, man, that's actually pretty sick. Like at least that's better than me watching James Bond as a kid and be like, I want to be a womanizer spy or whatever, you know. So I know we will automatically judge it normally as like think of a negative thing, but there are some, like I was talking to him about, what would that look like? Like, what video would you want to create? And he's getting creative. He's like, oh, I've got this idea. I'm going to ask him to interact in this way. So even though, you know, he might not ever do that, there are some positives to that you know, the other things.
Independence of it is cool to just plant that early, right? It's like you don't think of yourself as like,
I'm just a factory worker or something.
Yeah.
You know?
You think of like actually being able to pursue something that is intrinsically interesting, like watching people make a living from just following their creative instinct is a very inspiring thing that is maybe more abstracted away 10 or 15 years ago, where like you're watching the movie but you don't really have a sense of, like, by definition you're watching an actor versus a person, you know, just
on
you're
YouTube.
building a relationship virtually with somebody. It's different for sure.
And so I guess that all goes to saying the original tweet on hardware and doing really hard things, I think it's a great point, and I do kind of agree. But like we kind of said here, there's a reason people just go and set up an app or a software business, because
go buy a ring light.
Or go and start a YouTube channel, is because the barrier to entry is way lower. And I guess that's kind of their point as well. Like, because the barrier to entry is higher for those, you're competing with less people. So if you're a really talented person, you can, you know, make it happen.
Yeah, and I guess the number of people you need to serve as a software business is significantly lower than a hardware. Like a manufacturing hardware business, right? So the commercially viable hardware business is like, you need to sell 1 million cars a year to get to zero, probably.
Yeah. Just to
business,
get to,
you can have like 12.
You break even.
Be fine.
You set up a gum road and you basically
Exactly.
I mean, honestly, like a service business,
it.
like we've both done that. I've done it. Like, you're profitable basically from day one, and so that is an interesting thing as well.
That's like the I guess the risk tolerance is so many factors. It's like risk tolerance and like the ability to pivot and change, and like I'm not just talking about capital risk in a hardware business. It's like, if you get it wrong, the amount it costs you is so insane. Like, even to like get a mold to make a part for something, right? It's like, it's just unbelievable the difficulty, and it feels like anything, I guess, it's just downstream of the incentives. Nobody's like, very few people are willingly signing up for that, but it does take a number of examples to normalize that. Another good example is the Anduril bloke, Palmer Luckey.
Who did the VR? He did what's it called? Thing that sold to Facebook VR. My head.
Oh, Oculus.
He sold Oculus now. Yeah.
I think so. He's involved in that. Yeah, I think so. Now he's doing like weapons technology, right?
Yeah, which is kind of wild. How different it is.
Fascinating, man. And Oculus, like, that was what, 15 years?
20 to get to like. He founded in 2012. He was 20 years old.
All right, so I was off then. So what it took like,
well, that's still
probably
10, 12
or 6 years to get a consumer device built too, right? Like, to get people to actually be able to purchase one in the shop, which is like a software business. You can't build software for 5 years before you ship it, right? Unless you're like Rockstar Games, let's say, but like B2B SaaS or whatever.
Exactly. There's a few like examples, but you're right. Like, and it's a good point, Jack, because the other thing is, I'm looking at this list of logos again, the Global Unicorn Club we were talking about. Now, the message, the response from Elon was major misallocation of capital. Most of this list won't make it. That's interesting, because I was looking at a date. It looks like as of January 2023, I think. It's really hard to see. It's tiny in the bottom right there. Now, I'm looking at some of these names and I'm thinking, I mean, first of all, I see BlockFi on there. So there's one already. There's a few of those from the that probably aren't going to make it in the same way. But no, all jokes aside, how many of the tech companies that got to $1 billion are still worth that now? Probably a lot less. Yeah. Secondly, even the ones that got into the public markets, if you think of Peloton, Zoom, like those ones, Peloton's still worth a lot of money, but not what it was at the top. Peloton at the top of the pandemic. But the thing I was going to say here is it's interesting vantage point, because Paul Graham, obviously one of the best investors out there, has made lots of money investing in startups. Elon, probably the best creator of businesses, right? Like in this mode anyway, obviously at this scale. And the interesting thing is, because if you just go back to what was being funded, like if I'm a VC, 9 out of 10 are going to zero. Like every book you read on how the mechanics work of that bet essentially is that 99% are probably not going to work. One of them may pay for the whole fund. That's just literally Peter Thiel's book. Is
it's
about
mongerism,
that, right?
man, isn't it?
Yeah.
Show me the incentive, I'll show you the outcome. Yeah.
Exactly. And so here
exactly
you've got the same thing. Is like if I'm a VC, why am I going to fund the thing that costs 10 times more to build? Unless it's Elon building SpaceX, where you're like, okay, this is incredibly ambitious, but you're Elon Musk. So I think the question here is, how many Elon Musks are there to actually build that
how many
level
investors
of
are there that have the level of conviction and foresight, and like it's the same thing, right? On the other side of,
and that's the incentive.
And like, what's interesting, like the Musk story, build a software business, make an like a absolute mound of capital, and then throw it all into a hardware business.
Yeah. What was, like, how much did he make? Was it 50 million made, I think, from the first one, right? Let me check.
I think my understanding was it was 100.
Okay, might be. Yeah, let me check. I'm gonna
and ask. Like literally every penny went into Tesla and SpaceX. I think like 80-20 or something.
I'm just checking this right now on ChatGPT, because I wonder if they'll get this right.
Knowledge cut off. We'll see.
There we go. He said made 165 million from the sale of PayPal. He was the largest shareholder of PayPal. Again, I've read this a long time ago.
I want to say it was 100 into SpaceX and 65 into Tesla. That's what I.
Wow. Okay, that sounds about right. Sounds about right.
And that like is a missing part of the story in that post. Is cleverly you have taken advantage of the shorter runway business and culture and whatever else to build something that can get to that scale in a short period of time, which delivered you a return that lets you do this. Like if he'd gone to raise money for SpaceX or Tesla before he had that outcome from PayPal or X.com, whatever it was at the time, would it have ever existed? I don't know. Like it's very, very difficult to imagine an alternate reality where you go with a PowerPoint saying, hey, I'm going to build a rocket and fly it to space. Like that whole story is so crazy. Like you're this one person like flying to Russia and negotiating for engines and stuff. It's like, I don't know.
And also having the foresight to know that, I can actually make a business from that. That there's a viable option to monetize it, when previously it was just NASA basically. Yeah, it's pretty incredible. So
well, it's funny even looking at like Mark Zuckerberg, that lens, right? It's like, I can make a product that competes with Facebook. It's like might take you 100 lifetimes to get close to it. Like that is such an outlier and insane thing. But do you want to encourage people to work on clones of Facebook, or like, things that clean water, or like have a atomic impact on people's lives in some way? A lot of people, myself included, would argue like the skills to do that are so much rarer and so much harder to come by, definitely. And more expensive to find, employ, build. That's the reason it's not more prevalent.
That's actually the last thing I'll say on that is you originally talked about the engineering, like how many people are even doing hardware engineering or like, mechanical engineering, whatever it's called. That's one part, but even those people, 99% of those people will never start a company, right? And so that's the other thing is like the percentage of people who are even just gonna be successful in making money for themselves is already a percentage of the population. Outside of that, doing a scalable thing is even smaller, and to then do hardware is basically you get to a handful of people, right? And that's that's maybe, part of the story as well. So yeah, anyway, very interesting discussion, mate. Nice flag on that one. I think we could probably wrap it here. I know you got lots going on with the events this week. Thanks for making it work this week. And I hope you guys enjoyed that one. We got a great episode for you next week as well, for ideas that change our lives. I think that's going live next week, that Trung and I recorded. And then I think after that, we'll be back to our usual schedule. So hope you guys have been enjoying all of these, and we will see you on the next one. Peace.